Hello, I'm Stephen Evans. I'm the rector of St Marylebone, and I've been here since September 2010.
This is Marylebone, and this is St Marylebone, a very grand church for a rather grand area. While Marylebone's most famous resident may be fictional, it quite quickly became clear how important this church was to the story of Marylebone as a whole.
There are lots of monuments on the walls here. We've just passed the earliest monument in the building, which dates from the 17th century, the Howland family that lived in what was to become Marylebone in the 15th century. This has been in the two previous parish churches. This dates back to the church that was built in 1400. But this building was opened in 1813.
Is the 1400 one the one that's in there's a little graveyard down there with Charles Wesley?
That was two of them. That was the 1400 one and the 1741. And the 1741 stood until 1949, 1950, but it had been very badly damaged by the bombs that fell in this area and was demolished. And in fact, the demolition of that building is what spawned the St Marylebone Society.
Were they all called St Marylebone?
Yes, but the first church was actually built in about 1116 on what is now Oxford Street. And it's where Debenhams used to be.
Okay.
And that was the parish church until 1400.
Okay.
And that was actually called St John of Tyburn, because it was the two old manors of Tyburn and Lilliston that formed the parish of St Marylebone, and they go back into pre-Saxon times. And that church had really fallen into disrepair as a result of vandalism and theft by 1400, not least because it wasn't very far, of course, from the public gallows at Tyburn.
Of course, yeah.
Which is now more or less where Marble Arch is, as you know. And that church was, as far as we know, simply either completely stolen or just knocked down. And they moved the parish church up from Oxford Street to a site opposite the Tyburn Manor House, which is now where the London Clinic is. And that building they named, because it was very fashionable in the 15th century, to name churches after the Blessed Virgin Mary. And so that church was called the Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary of Tyburn, and somehow Mary of Tyburn became Marylebone. And the BBC, I think, recognised 15 different ways of saying Marylebone. And in the past, it was written Marrowbone, or Mary Lebone, or all sorts of variations of that.
I think you were saying it the right way.
Marylebone.
Marylebone.
You need a Y after an R. And before the L. So this is the marriage of the rake, which was painted by William Hogarth in the second of St Marylebone's parish churches. So this was done in 1735, and well, it is the marriage of somebody very rakish who ends up having to marry for money.
Obviously, but not
for beauty. So it's, well, yes,
one
of the exactly, yeah. And that's the inside of the old parish church, and even the church itself. You'll see it's a whole morality tale, and the Ten Commandments, especially that relate to murder and marriage and those things, there's a crack all the way through them. There's a fight going on in the background. Here's the church of 1731. That's painted in 1733. So that's the church of 1400 in which that was painted. This is meant to be the same church later.
Oh, and then there you can see the arch windows on the end. Look there,
this one is the next church on, and that's the one that stood until the early 1950s. So the building was opened in 1817. At the time, had a double gallery all the way around it. So we're standing on what remains of the second gallery, and this gallery used to go all the way above the lower gallery.
Cutting these windows?
Yeah, and the same on the other side. And until 1883, the church ended where the great arch is. So the choir stalls, the benches on the ground floor, which is the largest collection of mahogany benches anywhere in the world,
Okay.
were put in 1883. And that's when the current decorative scheme comes from. We have the world's largest fibrous plaster ceiling, which was invented in Marylebone, fibrous plaster, in just off Oxford Street, in what was a hive of the decorative arts movements of the 19th century. And the person who painted most of the paintings in the apse and around the apse of the church, and also carried out the work on all the mosaics that are there, was John Compton. And John Compton was the principal of the Heatherley School of Art, which still exists today and was a very famous school of art in the 19th century, founded in the 19th century.
Based near here.
Based again in Marylebone, near Rathbone Place.
Was the area always wealthy?
Yes, so it was the whole area. St Marylebone was built to get the very sad, mosquito-ridden inhabitants of Mayfair somewhere decent to live. Okay. And that is entirely true. And so this was on the rising slope up towards Primrose Hill, and then on up towards Harrow. So it's all uphill, and it was the clean air and the fresh fields that formed this enormous speculative building. And so the doctors who used to operate in Mayfair all moved up to this new street, new speculative development called Harley Street, and they've been here ever since. And the Regent's Park, into which the church looks, was the royal hunting ground and had been for centuries. And George IV was going to build a whole new palace in Regent's Park when he was Prince Regent, because they'd had to demolish Carlton House just off the Mall because it was falling apart. And he kept running out of money and going bankrupt. So that wasn't built. And then this church was built as to become the new Chapel Royal, because the palace was going to be in the park. Oh. And that's why Regent Street is the way Regent Street is. It was the new triumphal processional route going north to his palace in Regent's Park.
It's quite decorative.
Yes, when the church was built, it was the most expensive church building built in the UK. It cost just over £80,000 back in the early 1810s.
Yeah.
And it looked much more like a theatre in those days. And this scheme, this very grand decorative scheme, which one commentator on its reopening in 1883 described as God's drawing room. And in some ways it is. And it now looks even more like God's drawing room, because the two chandeliers that hang used to hang in the St Marylebone Town Hall when the borough of St Marylebone was the precursor to the city of Westminster. Yeah. These were being thrown out because they decided to put in strip lighting and a suspended polystyrene ceiling.
Oh, I think you got the better end of
so
that
what
deal.
So what you do, you give them to the parish church. That's why they don't match the other sort of pendant lighting, which all dates from 1883. During the war, the Blitz did a huge amount of damage in central London, especially in Marylebone, and all the windows were blown out. And after the war, during the war, somebody went around and collected as many bits of glass as they could find, and then after the war, they were all reset, which is why we have these unique sets of windows with the stained glass around the window, and then, in fact, rather poor quality clear glass forming the bulk of the window.
And you haven't got a complete
Nothing's left.
But everything's just. But it's it must let lots of light into the church.
It does. Well, I think when the church was first built, they would have been clear windows, and then the stained glass came in with time. But most of them from the early 19th century.
How would you have accessed the gallery here? From here or somewhere?
From the staircase.
Oh, yeah.
There is another staircase at the far end of the building.
But it must have made it so dark.
It would have made it much, much darker. Yes, it would.
These are in very, very good order. So I don't want to in any way diss other churches, but usually when you come up to these balcony areas, they look like they've never been used.
We use these at least once a week. We have 2 schools.
Yeah.
And one of our schools is here in the churchyard, the St Marylebone school. This is where they come for assembly every week. Anything that's big,
Comes here.
They come here.
Just while we're here, I see organ.
Yes,
I see some organ pipes all the way over there.
So those organ pipes were from an organ that was here until 1987. And then this massive beast was built by an Austrian firm called Revd Orgelbau. And they have 3 great instruments in the UK. This is the largest of them. They also have the organ in Christ Church Cathedral in Oxford and in St Giles Kirk in Edinburgh. This one's just been rebuilt, which is unusual for an organ that's only 40 years old. This organ gets played from 9 until 6 every day by the organ department of the Royal Academy of Music, and from 6 in the morning till 9 by our own organists, and then from 6 until midnight. So, and when they came to redo it, they said in less than 40 years, it has already had something like 140 years worth of use, because and also because of the pollution from the Marylebone Road and the dust the traffic produces from tyres. So nearly every bit in the organ has been replaced.
Thank you.
So we're now not exactly in the base of the tower, because that's obviously in the basement of the building. So this is about the 4th floor of the tower.
Yeah.
And beneath us is the choir vestry, so the room where the choristers robe up and do some of the rehearsals and things. Yeah. And we're now going to go up onto the roof.
Awesome. Let's do it.
This is the case to the clock of 1810. At the time, it wasn't fashionable to put a peal of bells into churches. So we have just 3. And they ring the quarter hours and strike the hour. The main pendulum has long gone when the clock was made into an electric clock. So it's now, somebody doesn't have to wind it every day. You can still see the pendulum swinging if you come round.
This is an amazing space. It's vast. You could stage a musical up here,
couldn't
couldn't you?
So this is the inside of the roof. The wood is all oak. We think it was all felled in Regent's Park at the end of the 18th century, early 19th century. And when we've done all our works, which have included replacing the whole roof, we've managed to keep 99% of the original. It's now also the most environmentally friendly roof in the UK. It entirely meets passive house standards. So it has been engineered to both keep heat in, but also keep heat out. And as part of our doing the roof, we reinstated the Regency air conditioning system, which starts on the ground floor with air bricks in the outside walls. There's then a flap in front of every window. And then there is a frieze that's open all the way around the ceiling, which you can see here. I'll show you in a moment. And we've reinstated a 19th century mechanical ventilation shaft that regulates the temperature up here in the roof. So on part of the roof, we've had to reconfigure the shape. And that's this very modest segment here with this enormous beam, a reinforced steel girder. And we've had to rebuild up in matching brick to the 19th century brick to create the shape. And you can see behind me how we have changed the shaping of the roof and how its articulation has changed. And that's the only real change we've made to allow us to get rid of more water.
So is this the reshaping of the roof visible from ground level?
No, it's not even visible when we're on the roof, but we'll see that next.
Okay, cool.
Just to show you what we've done with the ceiling. So that enormous ceiling we had to more or less rebuild because it was formed on an earlier ceiling of 1810, which are the lath and plaster bits here. And some of that was failing. So where it was failing most, it's had a steel mesh with more plaster put on top, which is what these areas here are. if you notice, the way ceilings were constructed was by hanging them on gypsum hangers from the rafters. And we've had to more than quadruple the number of hangers. And into each joist, there's now a very high tensile steel pin with a something just a bit bigger than a 10p piece in stainless steel embedded in the plaster. So the whole, and there are more than 3,000 of those, and that's now what holds the ceiling up.
But that was preserving the original plaster. You didn't remake the original plaster.
There were lots of areas that had to be but in matching plaster.
Yeah.
And I was talking about the frieze, which was part of this Regency system.
Yeah.
And if you look down here, you can see where it's open.
Oh, the daylight, you mean?
Yeah. So that's the church beneath
Okay.
us. And that goes all the way around.
And does this mean when you have the corporate sponsored carol services, people aren't sitting there shivering like that?
The church was always very hot.
Oh, really?
So the heat wasn't a problem. Getting rid of the heat was a problem, which is why we've reinstituted the Regency system and put in this ventilation bit. These are the winches that hold up the chandeliers.
Okay.
Each one weighs about 1/4 of a ton. So you don't want them crashing sort of Del Boy-ish into the congregation.
It's a genuinely gobsmacking scale.
It's not small. And when we get outside, you'll just see how big it is.
Okay. Oh, wow. Thank you.
So up here we have 10 tons of new Welsh slate from the same quarry that provided the slate when the church was built. This is from our topping out ceremony in 2022, where we sort of finished the roof. Around to the right, that's where Charles Dickens lived. And if you read chapter 5 of Dombey and Son, it's an exact retelling of the baptism of one of his children. And there were 5 of his children baptized here. And also the bell ropes that you saw. There's even a description of that bell cupboard in Dombey and Son.
Awesome. Yes.
This is one of central London's last 2 surviving great elm trees. And the other one is now in the middle of a pavement about 50 yards away, because it used to be in the old churchyard where the predecessor parish church to this was. And when they widened the roads, the tree is now just in the middle of a pavement because they moved the boundary wall to make a bigger road. So again, unless you knew, you wouldn't know, but this is where that great beam comes across, and where we had to reshape the walls inside to make this new articulation between an older lead roof, which this is, and the new work in slate. The clock tower has several cracks in it. And they were because during the war, a barrage balloon that was anchored on Primrose Hill broke its moorings and drifted south, and then came to rest by wrapping itself around the tower. And the force of that has caused these cracks.
I'm guessing they're illuminated at night time.
No, because of our environmental concerns, we no longer illuminate unless there's a real reason for doing it.
This is quite thrilling.
So from here you see the new entrance to Regent's Park, created by John Nash, because this church was built when Nash was not expecting it to be built, and Nash had not been selected as the architect. And so he had to create this whole vista. And one of the most famous views of the church is from the bridge at York Gate, which is currently being rebuilt.
I had to go.
And of course the Marylebone Road, which was the new road built to move animals, livestock and geese to market in the 18th century, is the place where the first bus route was.
Really?
And where the world's first underground train ran. So a really important bit. There's also the shaping of Marylebone as a grid is what was the first sort of major use of the grid in England since Roman times. And it was picked up by Haussmann, who then redesigned Paris. So Paris is just a sort of an ersatz Marylebone relocated into France.
So how often do you come up here?
This is my second time today.
Oh, really?
True.
I thought you were going to say, oh, not as often as I want.
No. And then down here we try to tell something of the St Marylebone story. This is our family tree and just some of the institutions that have been founded by the vestry of the parish through time, including, of course, local government, which is why there's a mayor down here and the town hall lion. So the vestry ran the sort of the civil life of the parish until 1890. Then the metropolitan boroughs were founded, so the borough of St Marylebone, and then that was subsumed into the city of Westminster at the end of the 1960s. And behind you, we have a rather wonderful survival.
Love this.
A model of the church made by Edwin Lloyd in 1869. And what's especially useful for us is that it shows the church before the apse was built, so before the work of 1880.
The fact that this is an add-on is much more obvious from the outside.
It is, although it
I mean,
sits quite comfortably.
It's comfortable, but yeah.
What it means is that the school has the narrowest main entrance of any school, I think, in the country.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the dedication plaque for the new work, which is dated 1884. We still have the position of Crown Church Warden. So the Crown appoints one of our lay officials. In fact, it appoints two. It appoints a Crown Warden and it appoints a Crown Sidesman. And they were really to do with the fact that this was going to be the Chapel Royal for the new palace for George IV, but also that because the vestry, which we've talked about, ran the civic infrastructure of the whole area, the Crown had two direct inputs into the vestry in the person of the Crown Warden and the Crown Sidesman.
Does that mean they pay their salary?
No.
That's the usual way.
They are not salaried posts.
Okay. I don't quite understand. Why would the Crown need a parish chapel when they've got chapels in their houses? And...
Well, Brighton has a chapel royal because of Brighton Pavilion, and of course he was always going bankrupt, ran out of money, couldn't afford to build his great palace in Regent's Park, but they had already bought what's called the advowson of the living, of the right of the Crown to have a say in who the rector was going to be and who the Crown Warden and the Crown Sidesman.
And does that persist? Do the Crown still get involved in the appointment of these
so
roles?
when I was appointed, my appointment was delayed by 6 weeks because there was a shortage of vellum. It's just a true story.
I'm always running out of vellum.
Yeah, and we all are, aren't we? Because the letters patent, which are produced by the Crown, that demands that the Bishop of London inducted me as the rector of the parish. It just always sounds very medieval, doesn't it, really?
It does.
But yeah.